Welcome to Grow My Etsy Shop podcast, the drips of knowledge you need to start growing. Hey, welcome. So I was working on my podcast this morning, and then I got distracted and started looking up why there's no islands in the Gulf of Mexico or America or whatever you want to call it. And isn't that weird? Why don't we have some dope Caribbean? Well, I guess it wouldn't be Caribbean, but why don't we have an island in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico? I don't know. So today we're going to be talking about niche fatigue. And I didn't really know that this was as big of a problem as it is until I started doing the Growth Society. So I'm going to do a little plug here. As you guys know, I have this Growth Society, which is meant for people who are on this podcast who kind of like this style of teaching and whatnot to be able to come in and get more visuals and more help and more just attention to their shop. I think it's really great. And I've had really great feedback. In fact, at the end of the month, I had let in a small group of people and said like, hey, how was this? And everyone was like, great. Yeah, we want to keep going. We wanted this to, so I was like, perfect. So at this stage, I am opening it up more. If you want to check that out, you can jump over to the link that's in the description. You can grab into that. Okay, back to this. So in the Growth Society, I do a lot of, like I jump on, I go live, I talk to people, I bring people up on stage, we go through shops, the whole thing. And I was starting to see this pattern a little bit more than I do when I'm with my mastermind people and whatnot. And it's this niche fatigue, or this trying to put a circle peg into a square hole. And I'm going to break this down for what this looks like, because I think a lot of people suffer from this. It's like if you watch enough YouTube videos, you're going to be like, I need to niche. Like that is something I have to do. I can't just go up there and throw a bunch of crap up on Etsy. Now, I will say this, it can work sometimes when you have like a crochet chicken and a decorative seashell and people are buying your decorative seashell, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is working for me. This is really exciting. It's just not scalable. You can't scale something like this because Etsy doesn't know who your buyer is. And so as soon as that trend starts to hit the end of its run or competition comes and eats at that listing, you die. And then you are, at one point making a livable wage to now making nothing, and all your traffic is ceased, and you're just like, I don't know what to do. I had somebody this week, they were selling vintage Barbies, nuts from a tree, and something else. Oh my gosh, what was it? And something just as strange. And, we had an hour-long conversation. I was just saying, like, look at your traffic flow and then look what happens when you try to scale that. It just doesn't work. And so we took 8 steps back with her store to be able to say, look, you need to focus in on what it is that you're selling and who that you're selling. That is the definition of niching, and it's very important with Etsy. The question becomes, at what point have you niched too much for too long? And is this even the right direction to niche? That's what we're going to jump into. So let's start here. If you are breaking into new niches, you're a newer shop, you haven't quite taken off yet, your traffic is going to jump up and down. It's just part of Etsy's growth. There's that beginning stage where it's just kind of volatile. And as you get established and really understand who your customer is, what they want, how to build it better than other people, that's when you start to see more of a flow of traffic that's consistent. Now, this can change obviously based on holidays. This can change on seasonal products, etc. However, for the most part, you're able to kind of plan out what your traffic is going to look like. But those who can't do this, or their income is all over the map, or their traffic is all over the map, it usually falls down to 2 reasons. Number 1 is you're trend hunting. So you're placing things up that are trending. So what does trending products do? They bring in a lot of traffic and then they die down as soon as the trend is gone. Number 2 is you haven't figured out how to capitalize on a niche yet. This means that you have something that's kind of working, but you haven't capitalized on that opportunity yet. And so this is where I coined the phrase of like a niche fatigue, where it's like, here's the perfect example of this. Let's say that you create boho wall art and something takes off and you're like, oh my gosh, this is working for me. So you start to create more boho wall art, and maybe a couple other things are starting to sell. You still have a great seller, but you're getting other things that are selling for you. And at this stage, you would say, I have a niche. My niche is boho wall art. Well, what's going to happen? How are you going to spend your days? You're going to sit down at your computer and you're going to create more boho wall art. And you're going to keep doing this and keep doing this and keep doing this. You're going to fill this category up in your store, but your overall selling isn't going to change much. I had a person that I worked with last year who sold, she was POD, she made shirts, and she found this really great niche within the medical field. And she spent her days creating for that niche, and she made good money. She was just under 100,000 in what she was doing. She made good money in this niche, and she didn't want to break from that niche because she was like, this is really great for me. I've dabbled in other things. I've never had the success that I've had in this niche. And my advice to her was over and over and over again was to say, you have to, because you're going to niche fatigue, which means all the work that you're doing, you're putting into this niche, and Etsy isn't delivering more traffic to you. You're just giving more options to your buyer. And at what point do the options just not matter anymore? Do you just have so much that's going towards one person that they pick the things that are their favorite? So a good example of this is if you have, let's go back to the crocheting. If you just crochet chickens and nothing but chickens, eventually someone is going to choose their favorite chicken who's looking for a crochet chicken, and there's going to be a most popular version of that, and then you just keep creating chickens. And they're like, got it, appreciate the chickens, I like this one. This one's my favorite. Etsy does the exact same thing with their SEO, is that they're not going to show all of your chickens. They're just going to pick the ones that have the best track record. They're going to put those on search. They're going to give inspirational keywords to the ones that sell the best. And so though you have 900 chickens in your store, only 4 of them are ever going to be seen organically through search. So let's jump back to our boho girl here. So she's got boho wall art. She's created versions of boho wall art. She has that in her category in her store, and she's good. Now, where does she hit niche fatigue? Is if she keeps creating and creating and creating and creating, and that doesn't bring more traffic into her store. So now she's spending time not getting the traffic that's from that. Eventually, competition starts to come in at her. She starts to see a dip in her views and her sales, and so she creates more boho wall art. You see where this is going. So what she needs to do is, and this is a fun exercise, is you can take your niche that you currently are, and sometimes your niche is just what's selling best in your store. So for those following along at home, what is selling best in your store? And you kind of write that down, or you have that visual of what's there. Let's just say it's boho wall art. And now you can draw lines from that to say, who is this person that's buying boho wall art from me, and what is it that they want? So, for example, someone who's buying boho wall art might also want boho phone cases. They might also want boho digital planners because they have this vibe that they like. A good question that you can ask yourself is, what can I upsell them or cross-sell them? Meaning, if they buy wall art from me, can I sell them something else based on what I know? So a good example of this is if somebody comes in and buys peanut butter cookies from you, you could say, what are things that I could upsell them? Meaning, what do they like? Well, they like cookies, so could I sell them more cookies? And what can I cross-sell them? Meaning, what goes with cookies? Milk, for example. So could I sell them a gallon of milk to go with their cookies? Can I sell them something else that goes with their cookies? And when you think like this, you can start to see how you can avoid niche fatigue and move into what is called adjacent niching. Gosh, it's hard to say, which is creating adjacent niches next to the target audience that's coming in. I actually have a video that I made about this. Well, I didn't make it, my son did. I'll put the link in the description. It's usually in the growth program, but I had my son remake it, and so I'll put it in there. You guys can see it. It just teaches the difference between kind of the concepts that we're talking about. So go check that out. And while you're at it, I actually have my son, I've hired him as my video editor, and he's made this other video for me that's about inspirational and detailed keywords, and it's worth watching because he's got a quirky sense of humor, and you're going to see a sense of humor in his video editing skills. So back to this boho wall art stuff. So we have our boho wall art, and we start to say, look, I think people who are coming to our store like boho. And so I'm going to create more things like this that I can cross-sell. Hey, you bought that wall art. You might like a phone case. You might like a digital planner. You might like something that's on your desk. You might like, because you know the themes of which they like. The other thing that we learn from this, when they're buying boho wall art, is that they also like wall art. So again, this goes back to the peanut butter cookies. Can we sell them more cookies? And can we sell them things that complement the cookie? So complementing something if they're buying wall art, this is us saying, hey, can we offer more wall art to this person? So this is where you would first tackle more themes that are similar to what you've created. And this is what we always do when we have a great seller. Is like, oh, this boho wall art's selling really well for us. Let's create more of this. What we don't want to do is create more of this until our fingers fall off. We just create more of this so that Etsy has more variety. The traffic that's coming in is being served. And so I usually find that this can sit between, and this is a hard number to give, because there's a difference between wall art and like physical products. But usually when something's digital and stuff like that, you want to get into the 20s of creating different versions of what you're doing. Now, that doesn't mean 20 different listings. Well, it does mean 20 different listings. It doesn't mean 20 different products. You can mix your products up. You can use very similar products and just change the front picture, hit different keywords. Why you're doing this is you're just giving Etsy a variety of something to choose from. So an example of this is to say, wow, people are really buying these crochet chickens. Etsy's like, this is fantastic. The store has really great review rate and people like their chickens. I think they're priced really well. So what else do you got? And that you can say, oh, I've got a few chickens to go. And they're like, oh, we like this one and we like this one and we like this one. Thank you. And then those are the ones that they kind of promote. And then if one starts to die down, they're like, hey, do you have anything else? And you're like, yeah, I have this one. And like, oh, perfect. That's why you want to have kind of a bucket of things that sell well. Because as soon as something starts to die down, Etsy is going to want to replace that. And if you don't have something to replace that with, sometimes it's your competition that sits into that spot. But I want you to pay attention to how we are doing this, because what I didn't do is say, wow, this boho wall art is selling. I think I'm going to sell vintage Barbie dolls now. That's not what I said. I said, who are these people coming into my store, and how can I continue to serve these people? That's what makes a successful Etsy shop. When I see, and I have that mastermind group there's 10 people in it, and all of them are very successful, and all of them sell to a person. That doesn't mean their products are always all the same, but they sell to a person, and they have a skill set that they're selling to a target audience. Again, go watch that video. It's the first one in the description. That's going to really help you see the difference between the two. So now let's answer this question. Well, Jared, how do I know? How do I know when I'm too niche fatigued? How do I know the process of being adjacent in my niches? So this is kind of the formula that I walk through, the way I do it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the keywords themselves coming into my store. So if we go back to our boho example, are people searching for wall art or living room wall art or apartment wall art and bar cart wall art, and then I'm showing up in those searches? Because what am I learning from that? I'm learning that people are searching inspirationally and then clicking on what I create, which means that my traffic is people searching for wall art. So I'm going to create more versions of wall art. I'm not just going to focus in on boho. I'm going to create versions of what I'm doing. If I look at my stats and they're very boho heavy, so people are searching for boho, living room, boho, this, no. I'm going to know, the next step I'm going to go is creating more options that follow this theme. Because who's coming to my store? People searching for wall art or people searching for boho stuff? The answer is boho stuff. So that SEO is going to be helpful, or I shouldn't say that SEO, I should say the keyword data that we receive from our listings. And I want you to know that you can do this for individual listings. Just look at your listing as if you're a shopper. But if you're logged in, you can click the stats right there and you can see exactly what is being presented. I love a good conversion rate. So I look at how many people came to that listing in a month and how many did I sell. And if I have a high conversion rate on what I'm doing, I tend to make listings that follow more of that formula. Okay. The next thing that you can do, you've heard me say this, I love running ads because it's going to get me data and sales. And so you can do the same thing with your ad account. You can go in and look at some of these bestsellers that you have and see what's the traffic that's coming to these. Now, this is going to be a little bit more skewed when it comes to creating a niche because, I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. Because Etsy is going to show you, not necessarily always to the best people, but they're going to give you the data of what they're showing. So what you want to look at is, where's the majority of my money going? So what I always do is I open up my ad account, I click on view details or something like that. It opens it up. I click on items that led to search, or I should know this. You click on that and then you click on views, and it will filter it by what is bringing in the most views, or what are you paying the most for? What keywords do you pay the most for? And then this is where we put on our open mind cap, which means, and this is where you heard me say this before, sometimes I see this a lot. People are like, I have a great idea. I'm going to create this product for someone and they're going to love it. And then they come to me and they say, Jared, I can't sell this product, but I know my target audience, I know my niche, but I can't sell it. And I'm like, I think you're trying to fit a circle peg into a square hole. You just are assuming this is what they want. I have made adjustments to my business models all the time. I may think I know my target audience, but it isn't until you get something out there that you start to see it flounder a bit and you're like, oh man, what is it? What's the tweak? So as much data as you can get is really helpful in this stage. And unfortunately on Etsy, you can't just contact everyone who's ever clicked on your listing, but ad accounts do provide data for you to be able to see, what does Etsy think that I'm selling and what keywords do actually get clicks in. And so then when you start to see that, you can start to say, looks like a lot of people are searching for this, or Etsy thinks I'm selling this, or Etsy's bringing me this traffic. Can I, with my open mind, create something that fits more of that mold? And I think this is where we can get lost, is that we just think, I know my customer best, or I know my target audience best, or this is who I want to sell to, or this is what I want to make. And that isn't how business works. You don't just get to decide what it is that you want. I mean, you can. It's hard to scale that. It's hard to scale, well, this is what I want to make, and I don't want to move from that. Going back to our POD friend, she was like, this is what I want to make, and I don't want to move from that. And I'm like, I get it. It's just hard to scale. The other thing that I do when I get into, after I look at my keyword data, what's Etsy bringing to me? What are people clicking on? Is there anything that I can create with my open mind now that fits more this? I move into, what does the research tell me? So Etsy has right in there stuff now. And I think if you are a Plus member, meaning you pay for Etsy Plus, which if you pay for Etsy Plus, you get like ad credit that goes with it. So if you're running ads and you pay for Etsy Plus, it actually ends up only being like $5 a month once you get your credit in and all that stuff. Because you also get free listings. I think it's like 5 free listings, some ad credit. And so it ends up kind of paying for itself in some of those areas, especially if you're using this research tool, which I think is pretty good. And so you go in there and you can search for, and there's a free version of it as well. If you just go into your Etsy shop, or I'm sorry, in your dashboard, and you click on I'll look right now. Hold on. Yeah, it's actually in a weird spot. It's under stats, and then you go to Marketplace Insights. And in there, you can see there's a section where you can type keywords into, and it will tell you data on that. And I was in this actually yesterday because I had someone come to me and say like, hey, I have these Christmas products. They're not really getting a lot of traction. Jared, can you help me out? And I pretty much took her keywords and I plugged them into there, and I could see that the traffic had been pretty flatlined for these specific keywords that she had. And then it was just starting to spike up. So what was my advice to her? I was like, hey, wait a second. The traffic's just starting to roll in for this. I think that's when we'll start to see more going on here. And so this is where this tool can be very helpful. Anyway, I'm going to go into there and I'm going to use research to help me stir the thinking juices up. So I kind of have what people are coming into my store for. I understand that, for example, if I sell my boho stuff, like I can either go into this wall art niche or I can go into this boho niche for a bit. And keep in mind, I don't need to stay in that boho niche forever, but can I build out phone cases and digital planners and all that stuff for boho people and then move that into the next theme of people, maybe goth people? Yeah, you can. And that's actually, I would say, the most healthy way to do that is to, I call it filling the niche and then making that niche adjacent. Start spreading that niche out. So you've heard me call this vertical scaling and horizontal scaling. That's what this is. This is what we call it in the marketing world. I'm bringing this into Etsy sellers. Now, once you go through this and you're doing research, and what you're looking for when you're doing research is like, is this a super saturated keyword? Like, for example, if I'm getting like one sale a day from my boho wall art, and I'm like, I think I'm going to try to tackle the term wall art. You could just do the research really quick and be like, that is a C that I'm never going to accomplish. And so you're just looking for more niche type areas that you can move into based on what your target audience already is. So boho type people, wall art type people. Where can I get them? The human thoughts you should be having, I think this is for me, because we can always get stuck in the data. We can always start looking at this kind of stuff and thinking we're making good decisions because we're using data. But there's a human aspect to business. It's at the end of the day, a robot does not buy from you. A human does. So one of the things that I always ask myself is, can I, like for example, if I have boho wall art, I ask myself, can I cross-sell this? This is a big question because this is how you can scale, which is to say, if someone buys this product from me, will they also want to buy this product from me? So if I sell boho wall art and I say, I'm going to create another version of a boho wall art that looks just like the one I have, but it's a different color, can I cross-sell that? The answer is no, which means you are a one and done Etsy shop. They're going to buy your product and they have no desire to ever come back. Part of the value that you get with Etsy is that you get a traffic flow of a certain type of person. So you want to be able to build products for a specific type of person. The way you do that is you say, they're buying this wall art from me. Is there something else I could offer them that they would like? And if you think this way, you'll start to realize that a customer becomes valuable to you. Because instead of just being one and done, you actually have multiple things that you can offer the same customer. It makes it so that when you do send your packaging out and your business card is in there and you're a little postcard that's promoting more products that you have, it isn't more of the same product. It's more products to a specific person who normally you would have to pay a lot of money to get that type of data. If I was selling, for example, let's just go with peanut butter cookies, I would have to get a list that was curated for people who have bought peanut butter cookies in the past. And then I'm going to try to sell them my cookies. You get a list every day. And you get that person's full attention every time you send them your package. They open up your package and they get to see your product. And you are getting data, which is that they like boho wall art. They're not opening a package for boho wall art. They're opening a file, but you get what I'm saying. So when they open that file, and there's your file ready for them, what's stopping you from having a second PDF that's connected that says, hey, here are other things in my shop that you might be interested in, Mrs. Boho? Because you like boho stuff and you like digital products. I got calendars, I got phone cases, I've got phone wallpaper, I've got the whole thing. Come check me out. That's how you can build this out, and that's what Etsy can sink its teeth into. Because they really like to know, hey, this store's for this type of person. These boho shoppers, they really like this store. So when you offer variety to them, that's when you can really start to get into new keywords. And you've heard me say this before, diversify your keywords. So now you're not just under wall art, but you're under phone cases, phone wallpaper, digital planners, so on and so forth. Okay, hopefully this made sense. Guys, I've put a lot of links in the description below. So you have your first video. I would watch that. I think that's great. The second one is just if you're in the mood and appreciate Luke's editing skills, you can check out that video. I've got this guy named Peasant Pete who is taking stuff from the Grow Society and he's bringing it out into YouTube, and so you'll kind of catch the references there. And then I can't invite you enough, come check out the group we have. It is awesome. For me, I've learned a lot, and I'm the freaking host of this thing because there's just so much variety that's in here. I think we're all like, the engagement within the group is really, really good. And I have to give credit to the platform, School. They're always updating the platform. And one of the updates they made this week was that I can have tiers. And so before it used to be one price can get you in and then you just get everything. And now it's, you can come in and like sample things. So you can come in and be part of the community for really cheap. And then if you're like, hey, I would really like to get more, then you can just move up in tiers. So I think that's really cool what they've done. I actually have a couple people in my mastermind group who are using School instead of like collecting emails and stuff like that. And they have hundreds of people in their group. And, you know, how cool is it that if you sell a specific product and you're like, oh, I know who these people are, let me move them in. And I can see this is where marketing is kind of going. And so if you are liking the sound of that for your own business, wait 1 week, because I'm gonna do a podcast episode about it next week. I'm gonna teach you some techniques on how to do this correctly, what I've learned just through this, and how I can see the potential of Etsy shops really taking advantage of something like this. So tune in next week.